If you want to be famous, make sure you run across three. There you go. Now you're famous.
So, bring your feet together, stand in Tadasana. So that was Yuko and Janet, for those of you at home, who flew by in a flash. There you go. Yuko's saying hi. We're one class. We're in real life here, and we're in real life there. Zoomers and roomers, as I call it. Hands to your heart center. Feet close or together. Breathing through your nose. We're in the Tara room, and the sun is shining in. That's nice, isn't it? Interlace your fingers. Stretch your arms diagonally, down and then up. Lightly tone the tummy. So light tone in the tummy. I don't know what it sounds like. Draws in and up, and the roots of the neck are soft. Breathing through the nose. Take a big circle to release. Your hands to the heart center. Catch a breath. Or two. Tara, Tara, is Sanskrit, which is Sanskrit for Sanskrit, for star. So you can step or jump to a star. Like old-fashioned 80s exercise classes. Star jumps. Then by raising your arms, you can feel how the collarbones are pulled up. And by pulling the collarbones up, you can feel how the breastbone is pulled up. And by pulling the breastbone up, you can feel how the belly muscles are pulled up. And by pulling the belly muscles up, you can feel how the pelvic floor becomes light and responsive, which is good. Left toes in, right foot and leg out, turning on the ball of the foot, finishing off the turn on the heel. Inhale, exhale, down to Trikonasana. Trikonasana. Big stretch, actually, for the first stretch, but I know you're good for it. Catch the deep breath. Whoops. And then keep your jaw soft. Nearly went then, didn't you? Jaw soft. A little bit of play. So balance is a great way for the hemispheres of the brain to balance. So Trikonasana obviously is a balancing pose. And for balance, I think you need fluidity. That's how I find it anyway. So fluidity means that you allow movement instead of trying to hold things stationary. Inhale, come on up. Good job. Hands on the hips, feet forwards, deep breaths. Turn your back toes in, front foot and leg out, breathing through the nose. Again, when you raise your arms, feel how your collarbones go up at the same time. And your ribs as well. You sort of feel that structural lift, which is really nice on the lower back muscles too. Inhale, exhale. Utthita, extended. Trikonasana, three angles. Trikona is three angles. Asana is semantically drifted to mean posture. Breathe deep, breathe honest, breathe natural. Breathe expressively. Breathe a sense of love. Here and now. Appreciation for the here and now. Inhaling to come up. Excuse me, hands on the hips. Deep breaths. Let's take the same pose and make it even harder to balance by taking the front foot forwards, that is towards me, and lining it up parallel with the front of your mat, right? So really properly parallel, like it mattered, okay? Your other foot goes back towards the back of your mat. You make sure your back toes don't turn out, but they don't have to turn in this instance. Cover your anterior superior iliac spine, hip points, with your hands, and then visually feel a softness. Isn't that marvelous? Oh, the sunlight is marvelous. Visually feel a softness coming between the front hips. It's like paradise in the Buddhist center today. Stretch your arms, Inhale, exhale. As long as I don't think about my glasses being crushed, I'm in heaven. Thank you for your empathy. I felt that, waves of empathy coming. But I also am in heaven as well, if I don't think about that. So when that sun comes through those plants, it's beautiful. So catch deep breaths, soft eyes, deep, honest, expressive breaths. It's even more of a balancing pose than the other variation. So ride the waves. You know, a surfer doesn't become rigid when she gets on a wave. She doesn't kind of freeze up. She gets fluid, you know. Inhale, come on up. Okay, swap round. So you do the same thing, put the other way around. Again, you're going to check that the instep of your foot is parallel to the front of the mat and that the back toes don't turn out. And again, we're going to cup the anterior superior iliac spine, the ASIS, so that we can imagine and feel between those front hips a softening. Stretch the arms, you'll feel the ribs lift. Inhale, exhale. Again, it's wobbly, which is great. Some schools of yoga or Indian soteriology talk about enlightenment as a wave, as urumi, which is the Sanskrit word for wave. I think it's a great metaphor because a wave is a living, sort of breathing, moving, powerful reality. But you can't grasp it. You know, it's too alive to be grasped. Of course, there's that famous Japanese painting. Who's that by? Anyone know? With the Mount Fuji in the background.
Yes.
Hosai, yeah, that was done in about the 18th century or something, 17th. You don't know, you know the name? You must be. Thought you were going to give me all loads of Hosai. What's his name again? Hosai. Oh yeah, everyone knows that painting. I should know his name. Anyway, there's a little boat in that painting as well, and that's apparently important because the wave looks like it's going to kind of cover the boat. I heard a thing on Radio 4 about it recently. I must listen to that again. Inhale, come on up. Sorry, we stayed there a bit long because I was fixating on that picture. Anyway, probably called the wave. I don't know, probably is. Shake out a little bit. Breathe easy. And feet back together for Tadasana. Hands to the heart. Breathing through the nose. So when you've got your feet together, they should be together or parallel. But you've got to check that. You can't just sort of hope. I do hope my feet are going. There's no point hoping when you've got eyes that work at least good enough for that job. And, you know, you can look, you can see. Interlace your fingers, stretch your arms diagonally, raise your arms up. Urdhva Baddha Angulya. Urdhva means up, Baddha means bound, Angulya, fingers. Up and down fingers. And then make sure the roots of your neck are soft, breathing is natural. You can move to help incorporate more fibers. So that's light tone in the tummy, incorporating more fibers. Moving left, moving right. Whatever movements actually help you, whatever movements help you. Finding the pelvic floor. Big circle, well done, hands to the heart. Breathing, stepping or jumping to a start. Breathe easy, jaw soft. Light tone in the pelvic floor, which actually comes from light tone in the tummy, a light Uddiyana Bandha. Well, Uddiyana Bandha means flying up. It's actually a name of a part of India in the Swat Valley, Uddiyana. Apparently this place, Uddiyana, has lots of thermals. So there's lots of eagles in Uddiyana that are flying up. So this is where the name comes from, according to one scholar that I know. Back toes in, front foot and leg out. Heel to arch. Breathe easy. Jaw soft. Again, feel the anterior superior iliac spine. Inhale, exhale, bend your knee. Down you come. Palm up. And top arm up, if you like. your body is like dowsing rods. I don't know if you know what dowsing rods are. They used to seem to always be on Blue Peter in the 1970s, dowsing rods. People used to use them to divine for water, like two rods. And if they crossed over, if I remember correctly from Blue Peter, it meant there's water there. And they seem to be able to find it. Kind of cool. Anyway, that fascinated me as a kid. But it's a bit like that with your body. You use it to tune yourself into the meditative experience called ekagrata, which means like gathered together, we could say, gathered together. Okay, arm down, palm down, push, come up on the inhale, find the pelvic floor, feet face forwards, take some deep breaths whenever you need them. So really let them happen. And then, of course, we're going to go to the second side. So turn the back toes in, front foot, front leg out. Check that you've got heel to arch alignment. Feel between the front hips for the inguinal ligament. This is a thickening of your abdominal tissues that serves as an attachment for the abdominal tissues between the front hips. And then stretch the arms. Inhale, exhale, bend your knee. Down you come, palm up. Look up, stretch up and breathe deep. It's like a salvation, that stuff, isn't it? That liquid chalk. If you do slip, I always bring liquid chalk with me. Put it wherever. Well, not wherever, just hands and feet. Don't put it on your face. It'll dry your skin out. Anyway, breathe easy. Jaw soft. Finding the pelvic floor. That's a genuine request in a pose. Find the pelvic floor. So for me, that's part of that tuning in, that sort of dowsing. I have to move, just like the dowsing rods move. Or you could compare it to a compass. Maybe that's you moving this way and that until the compass points the way you want. Tuning in on the pelvic floor. Arm down, palm down, push up. Push down, rather, come up. Hands on the hips, feet facing forwards. Deep, expressive, honest breath. Virabhadrasana number 1, for me, is all about the psoas and the iliacus, which are muscles that attach to the top of the inner thigh and go across the lateral pubis into the sides of the lower spine. Well, the psoas does. Let's see how that works in practice. Raise your arms, lightly tone your tummy. Breathe through your nose. So the light tone of your tummy is the way we find this uddiyana, this in and up action that I described. So you can tune in on that. And then turn your back toes in, front foot and leg out, and the whole body turns. Right? Whole body turns. Walk your front foot further across the width of your mat. So in studio, that means away from me. And on the back foot, you lift the heel, externally rotate it, and then land it again. Light tone in the tummy. Repeated. And then focus on the top of the inner thigh of the back leg. The top of the inner thigh of the back leg. Right? Which is where the attachment is to the psoas and the iliacus. So you can loosen off the psoas and the iliacus by moving your back foot, like sometimes raising the heel can be helpful. But also just being clear that that's your intention, to feel that area and to release it. And that becomes particularly relevant when you inhale, raise your arms up, exhale, bend your front knee. So here at this point, although yoga teachers do sometimes say, bring the little toe side of your foot down, don't. Not yet. It's more useful, usually, to lift up the back heel intermittently and to let the little toe side of the foot be just where it is. So you can tease the tissues around to level up. Particularly the inner groin area that I've been mentioning, psoas and iliacus, repeatedly. And if you feel and understand that those muscles come across your pubis on the lateral side, the outside of the pubic bone, then you can really feel the stretch, and that gives us an opportunity to not just feel it, but to give to it. Okay, well done. Inhale, come up, turn back to the front, bring your arms down and hands on the hips, take a deep breath. A few deep breaths. It's one of my favorite poses. It's really challenging in a good way. Find the pelvic floor, stretch, turn, lift. Make sure you don't impinge on the roots of the neck. I'm not sure that the instruction that sometimes is given to raise the arms and drop the shoulders is useful, or perhaps it's not. Maybe it could be useful, but it's not quite as refined as it could be, because the arms go up, but the neck stays soft. The neck stays soft. Back toes in, front foot and leg out, whole body turn. Same thing as before. So walk your front foot further across the width of the mat, lift your back heel externally, rotate it, and then land it again. That light tone remains in the tummy and the pelvic floor. The breathing is easy, the roots of the neck are soft, the eyes are soft as well. Good job. Inhale. Exhale, feel the inner groin of the back leg. Remember, you can let the back heel lift up if you find utility in that as you bend your front leg. And then it's playing and teasing that tissue around repeatedly. You know, in a way, the same way that some people comb their hair and find that the strands of hair gradually, through repeated combing, start coming together. Of course, that doesn't apply to everyone's hair types, but you know what I mean. You know, that kind of brushing, and then the strands kind of come together. So small actions, lots of small actions. As I say, intermittently lifting the heel, teasing that tissue around across the lateral pubis, and going further into release of that tissue. You stretch it, yes, and you feel its release. Yes, which requires a willingness to let go. And that requires confidence that letting go gives you more power than gripping on exponentially. Inhale, come up. Well done. Turn back to the front. What a pose. Hands on the hips. Breathing deep. Is that helping that chalk? Don't worry about that. No, that's fine. It's just chalk. Breathe easy. We're going to forward fold, because Janet nearly did anyway. So okay, go with the vibe. If you know you need bricks in front of you, then take bricks. The criteria is basically this. You know, if you forward fold and your back rounds, have bricks so your back doesn't round. Or bricks, blocks at home, you can use books. They can use anything, really. Anything that's stable and stationary. Turn your toes in and extend out the little toe side of your feet repeatedly. Abhyasa. So not just once, not just twice, but multiple times. And then lift up from the inner groins of both legs on an inhalation. Lift your chest as well. Exhale, fold over the top of the front thighs, hinge from the hip joints, fingertips to the floor or blocks, but your spine should be open when you land. We don't want to be rounded. Imagine someone standing up and being stooped. You would consider that not to be a good position for them. You would perhaps even recommend them to stand up straighter. Similarly, in this pose, right, so you feel along the anterior spine. And then there's movement. That's usually organic, natural, and it's purposeful. And of course, the purpose of this is to move from one experience where everything's divided, gain and loss, good and bad, right and wrong, you and me, have and haven't, cross over from that shore to the shore of interdependence. In interdependence, gain and loss don't exist. Right? But you can't just decide gain and loss don't exist. That's still an opinion. So you move into that shore by tuning into that. And you do that using your body. That's why I was describing dowsing rods, or you could talk about it being like a compass or a radio dial. So movements realign the body so that more fibers agree with the posture, more and more fibers. On a mundane level, we're melting myofascia. We're hydrating myofascia. We're increasing blood flow. All of this increases our range of motion. In time, you might find that as the hamstrings release through this range of motion, your lower back dips, which is good. That's its natural position, to have a little inward arch. But if it keeps dipping, It could feel uncomfortable if it dips too much, because then you find the tissues between the lower ribs and upper pelvis get squashed. So that gets alleviated by going lower. That might just mean lowering the blocks a little or whatever. A yoga pose is really a conduit for tuning oneself in. Right? It's very easy to think that yoga is the poses, and that the stronger you are, the more flexible you are, the better you are at yoga. That's not true on any level. You use the poses for the yoga. The yoga itself means absorption. There's actually a synonym. If you look it up in a Sanskrit dictionary, you'll definitely find one translation of yoga as absorption. Even if you take it back to its root, yuj, the word yoga means to link one thing to another so that they function as one, which again is what absorption means. Nothing is disagreeing, everything is together. Back to fingertips. If you're using blocks, right on the highest point of your fingers, walk your feet a little closer together. Come as high as you can on your fingers before coming up by feeling a pull down from the sitting bones to the heels. Imagine that line of energy, sitting bones to the heels, and then walk your feet towards each other, and we're going to come into Adho Mukha Svanasana, downward facing dog. So as soon as you're ready, which I think is probably now, we're coming to our down face dog. Hands a little forwards of the shoulders, breathing easy. Jaw soft, eyes soft. And feeling the palms, just feeling the palms. Jaw soft, eyes soft. Perhaps there's a little movement, left, right. When ready, lift up your bottom and pad your hands into the mat so that they merge with the mat more completely. And you can repeat that as many times as is effective. Again, it's the movement is a form of attuning. Attunement means bringing everything together. It means bringing everything together. So in the Katha Upanishad, which is the first text to overtly mention yoga as techniques and results of techniques, the famous analogy is that of a horse and a chariot, and a charioteer and the reins, and they all come together. Each one represents a different thing. The mind and the body and the senses, they all come together to make this yoga. Okay, well done. It's just a warm up. We're going to sit down perhaps with a block between the heels and buttocks, but if your knees are tight, certainly that's worth doing. And then resting one hand on top of the other. And breathing naturally, breathing deeply, breathing honestly. Some of us will find movement. Such as movement on the shins, side to side. Because of course, again, I'm just repeating the same thing. Movement is a method of attunement. Now, when there's attunement, or I sometimes call it agreement, which is represented by the Sanskrit phoneme Om, then there's peace as well. There's only a lack of peace. There's only chitta vikshepas, as it's called in the texts, a scattered mind. When the mind is scattered, when the mind is here and there and elsewhere. So as the mind comes together with the body, the breath comes together with both. It feels like the yogin is relaxing. The yogin is acting with complete generosity, because she understands that giving is her path to freedom. Okay, bring yourself forwards to your forearms, and your hands are like you're holding bunches of flowers. Okay, and then step your legs back, so your body is sloping from shoulder blades to buttocks, from buttocks to heels, but not stationary, not static. Only once has anyone ever tried to put me on their brochure for their studio as Jim Tarrant teaches static yoga poses. I had that once with the studio, and I was on the phone very, very quickly to say, that's not right. And of course, they were just trying to juxtapose it against the sort of ubiquitous vinyasa classes, which are very nice. But there's flow within a pose. Vinyasa, of course, means not placing. It can also mean, in a different translation, really placing, but more likely it means not placing. So here it's similar, there's a flow. Okay, knees come forwards, well done. Come to hands and knees, catch a breath. Wag your tail to intimate a psychological, physical looseness. Everyone knows that their psyche and their body are one thing. And that should also be intimated in the breath as well. So if there is looseness, true looseness anywhere, then there's looseness everywhere. That's just how it goes. So deep, honest, natural breathing, eyes relaxed. Take your knees forwards, towards your hands, and then turn your hands the other way round, so that your fingers point towards your knees. And there's clearly a stretch, and that's an opportunity. So a stretch is stage one, but stage one is the first stage of 2 steps in the path. Huh? Stage 2 is essential if you're to get to the far shore, so we see them as stepping stones. Stepping stone 1 puts you in the middle of the river, fast-flowing river. Stepping stone 2 puts you near the far shore, from which you'll easily step off. Stepping stone 2 is giving to the stretch, here and now. So that can involve play, like movement. It always involves breath. It always involves trust. Things are the way they are now. That's what you've got to deal with, right? You don't have to deal with the future. You don't have to deal with the past. Because you can't. Right? You can't. The future hasn't happened yet, so. And the past is gone. But you've got this, the eternal present. And that's what you'll always have. Okay, tuck under your toes. And we're going to peel the hands up slowly with the high heel kneeling position, which is loved by some, and other people have other feelings about it. But we won't do it for long. We'll lift the chest. We'll have the crown of the head buoyant. 2 or 3 deep breaths in this. I know it's a big challenge for some people. There are some people who are exempt, by the way, and they are people with metal plates in their feet. So if you've got metal plates in your feet, you probably know already that you're exempt from it because they can't bend. But if you haven't, then you know, let's ride the wave. Okay, well done. That will do. Very, very good. Stretch your legs out in front of you so that your legs are fully extended. In Dandasana, although we're not going to stay in Dandasana, so you won't need a brick to sit on because we're not going to stay. We're going to come straight from here in this marvelous sunlit room with these fantastic plants all around. It's like being in the jungle. We're going to come into so many people's favorite posture, Paripurnanavasana. No, not the kind of people I've ever met, but I just imagine many people love it. Lean the body back by 30 degrees. As you're going back, raise the legs up by the exciting 60 degrees. And then you'll be like, Jesus Christ, or other, perhaps you'll be Tara, more appropriate to the Buddhist center, breathing into it. You can feel the quadriceps. You can bend your knees if you want to. The skill of yoga isn't to be super strong, it's to be fluid, is to trust the moment. Once you learn it in yoga, then it takes several more decades to learn that that's also applicable in ordinary life. Well done. They're falling like flies here. Okay, bend your legs, hug your legs, lift your chest, and let's create a bit of lightness. Lightness in the lumbar, so moving side to side. We've already described how movement, because it presses and releases using the bones and muscles against each other, as it were, against each other, for each other, presses and releases. And what happens to myofascia is when you press into, or any fascia actually, you press into it, the fluid within it is pushed out. But the cool thing that scientists have discovered, I can't tell you the name of the scientist, I should look up the research paper really, but I know it is a fact that it's been scientifically researched, that when that happens, as the fluid comes back in, it comes back in higher quantities than it was originally. So you get more hydrate. And this causes glide in the tissues, it flows. We also know that movement melts extraneous myofascia. That's just how the body works. It works in quite a basic way, constantly creating fascia, not just myofascia, but superficial fascia and visceral fascia as well. It constantly makes fascia to support the body in positions that it's in. But if you stay in some positions too long and don't move in others, then the fascia just keeps building and building day after day until you get limited. And that limitation can actually cause problems, such as nerve impingements and blood pressure problems. Anyway, I could tell how much you loved the full boat, so you probably want to do a half boat now, because you love that so much. So, as I'm a man of the people, I like to think of myself like that, I'll do that just for you. So, hands behind the head. This time, we're not trying to keep the back flat. We roll back. We're going to go back by 60 degrees, but when you get to about 40, 45, then the legs will come up as part of that journey. So, lean the body back by 60, the legs go up by 30. That leaves them at the same height as the eyeballs. Trembling is acceptable, by the way, and quite normal, in fact. Breathe into it, let it be fluid, doesn't have to be static. So the normal length of time to stay is 3.5 minutes. So we're nearly there. No, bend your legs, I'm joking. Lift up your chest, breathe easy. Oh, so really, do you know what? It's tough, but I kind of like it in a weird kind of way. You know what I mean? You can't be in the past or future when you're in Ardha Navasana. So take a few more deep breaths and rock and roll around a little bit to loosen up. Now, seeing as we're going through a workout, and this is partly driven by my own insecurity, having seen a film with Christian Bale in it yesterday and thinking, oh, I'm not Christian Bale. And so we're doing a mini workout. And I know he's not supposed to be nice and stuff, but he's really handsome. Not in The Machinist. Oh, I haven't seen that. Oh, I'll watch that and that'll make me feel better. Yeah. So anyway, we're going to do one press up as homage to Hollywood stars working out. One press up. I think Christian Bale does more than one, usually, especially for Batman. I'm Batman. Probably more than one. But let's see how we go, you at home and us here, with one single yogic style press up. I wonder if Christian could do it. He could. Anyway, stretch back, shoulder blades to buttocks, buttocks to heels, and then you lower down to chaturanga. Don't hold it static, you can move if you need to. And then one, press up. There are no Christian Bales in this room. And then you just sit up and take a few breaths. That's one press up, so you can tell your friends, oh yeah, I worked out on Saturday. Did a big workout. What did you do? Well, I did one press up. Sort of. So take a few more deep breaths. Well done. You know, you tried. Now lay on your back. And I bet you like that. That would be nice. The film I saw was called The Big Short. I thought it was quite good. It's good, actually. Apart from Christian Bale making me feel bad again. Hands behind your head. It's because Kadeen's got a crush on Christian Bale. That's fine. Okay, hands behind your head. Take a breath or two. And I think I might have a crush on him too. 2 deep breaths. Jaws up. Now you can feel, right, pretty straightforward, the shoulder blades being pressed into the back body by the floor. You can feel that. I think you would need to go further up. Not you at home, I was talking to someone who came in the wrong way. Shoulder blades go into the back body and the chest widens and the breath is deep and honest and natural. And then you lift up your feet and your lower back will just give the floor a little kiss. Right? Your lower back gives the floor a little kiss. And I do think it's nice to sort of see it that way, actually. And then you kind of get into it. Love is the most beautiful thing, isn't it, in the universe? Because love is freedom. Why is love freedom? Because love gives. So in this moment, love means this sense of trust, this sense of wanting to give to this moment. And when you give to the moment, then the moment takes over instead of yourself, right? And what we normally call ourselves actually isn't ourselves. It's limitations, conditionality. We can even call it programming. Ourselves is something else. Now we're going to just toe tap a little. So the foot comes to the floor and lifts, and then vice versa. And just keep going with that. Neck soft, lower back goes to the floor. I quite like then to lift the head up because then you get the upper abdominal fibers involved as well. These kind of practices you first find these kind of practices attested around the 17th century in late Hatha texts like the Hathabhyasa Padati. Now, you can, if you want, extend the range, but you've got to keep the lower back close to the floor. Extending the range means perhaps tapping the back of the heels on the floor. Right? So it may end up with your leg extending completely, but it's really important, I want to press home, that we keep intimacy, and that word is carefully chosen, with the lower back and its contact with the floor. That should stay intimate. Intimate means, well, you know what intimate means. Okay, one more in each side. And then we're going to take a practice that's actually directly lifted from the Hathabhyasa Padati. So once you flex up, you can bring your head back down. And this is just kicking your own bum. The instructions in the Hathabhyasa Padati, Hatha, of course, means with force or dynamically, forcefully. Vyasa means practice. Padati is the path that you walk along. So it's the path to the teachings of the path of Hatha Yoga, how to practice Hatha Yoga. In that text, this pose is called Harinasana the Deer, and it's not done laying down. You do it standing up, and you do it in one single movement. And the instructions go, stand up, and then jump up and kick your buttocks with your heels. Right? That's the entire instructions for it. And that's why it's called the deer, because you can imagine a deer sort of jumping like that. Okay, still kicking the buttocks loosely. Lift your head. And then you feel those upper abdominal fibers as well, particularly of the rectus abdominis. That's the central sheath of muscle. And jaw soft, breathing deep. Okay, let the legs change to an up and down or backwards, forwards as your head comes down. It's not exactly cycling, but it's sort of more just up and down, right? And then eventually you can take that to the full range. My recommendation, again, intimacy with the lower back and the floor. That's more than a recommendation, I'd say that's really important. But my recommendation is as you get towards full extension, just accelerate a little bit. And then that will create the conditions for natural recoil. The leg will recoil. You'll get to that full extension. There'll be a moment where the energy coils up before it recoils. Right at the end of the movement. Okay, one more on each side or whatever you need to make it feel even. And then back, you come to the floor and take a deep breath. Take a few of those deep breaths, just let them happen. Just let them happen. Jaw soft, eyes soft, brain soft. Walk your feet in towards your buttocks. Still breathing deep, lightly tone the tummy in a sort of wave. The word is urmi, as I mentioned earlier. So it draws in and up, that's the uddiyana bandha, the in and up action. And then lift your bum off the floor, so hands are still under your head. And you can shake it, bounce it, sway it, tilt it. The idea of the movements is purely subservient to loosening up your lower back muscles, which often feel tight, to ensuring that you don't squeeze the buttocks together. They're definitely going to have tone in them from doing this. That's part of how you do this. But they don't want to squeeze together. So if they do, which they probably will do multiple times, you shake it out and reset, right? So movements of the pelvis are to shake it out and reset. Through this kind of swaying, tilting, bouncing, swooping, one can find more height with accompanying integration. More height with accompanying integration. So gradually the pelvis might lift higher, but for most people, locking it in one position will mean that it will be taken over by habit patterns and won't feel so good. We want to feel flow. Okay, welcome everyone. Down you come, slow and easy. Release your hands, stretch your arms out to the sides of you. And take some deep breaths. So elbows, if you look, should be a little higher than your shoulders. Your elbows, if you look, should be a little higher than your shoulders. Your arms are pretty much fully extended out. And that's really simple. And we'll take a few breaths just to let everything become calm and settled and essentially integrated. There's a correlation, in fact, it's a causation between the breath and the mind drifting. So if the mind drifts to the past or future or abstractions about yourself in the present, then the breath will lose its spontaneity. Conversely, if you trust in the spontaneity of the breath and give to that, your mind will stay dancing with the present. Put a little bend in the elbow and keep those elbows higher than the shoulders. Remember, the palms are facing up. Then we're going to lift the feet with bent knees and the feet are relaxed, hanging kind of limply. We're going to bring our legs to one side. Before we do, we're going to scoot the pelvis to the opposite side. Now, before we take this, it's worth saying that anyone who suffers from sacroiliac problems, that is misalignments between the sacrum, that's the bony plate above the tailbone between the buttocks, and the pelvis. If you suffer from sacroiliac problems, then either this lift and shift is exactly right for you, or is exactly wrong for you. So it has to be trial and error. It seems to be people have different reasons for SI pain, and so it suits different people. If you've got no SI pain, then this lift and shift is exactly right for everyone. So it's lifting, shifting the pelvis the opposite way to the way the legs are going, and then bringing the legs towards the floor while you look up at the ceiling and breathing. So breathing the back arm back down. The pose is called Jatara Harinasana. For me, I'm someone who likes to hover the legs rather than land them, right? Certainly we wouldn't land, say, the feet without the knees or the knees without the feet. Either both come down or they both hover. It's all about length. Suck in the tummy, lift the chest, and breathe the back arm back down. Saying yes is something we do with our breath, brain, body together. And it is a form of total devotion, bhakti in Sanskrit. Bhakti, B-H-A-K-T-I. Inhale, come up. Interestingly, the word bhakti, which is translated as devotion, once you're up just a line, the word bhakti comes from a root, which actually bhag, which means to give. So bhakti is devotion, and it's about giving. Devotion makes you want to give attention if you're devoted to someone or something. Some people are devoted to their musical instrument, you know. Some people are devoted to their family or devoted to their spiritual life or whatever it is. But it means that you give attention to whatever it is you're devoted to. So devotion is quite a special thing. Go ahead for the second side, so lift. If you're doing the flexing up and lifting the pelvis, then go ahead and do that. But remember, if that didn't feel right, you can abstain from that lift and shift and simply have the legs come over to one side. You got it? Lightly tone your tongue and pull up the chest. Use your exhalations. Use your exhalations. How do you use your exhalations? By focusing on them and focusing on letting them extend, being a bit longer. They've normally got a second or two more in them. So this is giving. It's by giving that you enter into this, onto the far shore, where, as I described it earlier, the experience is one of interdependence rather than independence. That's the difference. Inhale, come up, and of course interdependence is the foundation for compassion and wisdom. Tuck under the buttocks 2 or 3 times. Lay as comfortably as you can and breathe deep. Jaw soft, eyes soft. Brain soft, throat soft. Everything that can be soft actually is soft. Then flex up your hips again, and we're going to hug the legs gently. Now I'm a knees apart hugger, but in my observations over the last 3 decades, I've noticed most people go for legs together. So it's fine either way. For me, legs apart just has a different feel to it. It stretches different parts of the body. And for me, it gives me a feeling of looseness, which I like. But legs together has its own benefits as well. So you can try both and see which one conduces to the meditative experience. Again, if the mind goes to the past or the future, those are abstractions, those are divisions. And the spirit of awakening is founded on the non-divided, the interdependent experience. Because in the interdependent, there is no suffering, and the whole path is about suffering. Whether you're a follower of Buddhism, whether you're a follower of Shaivism, whether you're a follower of Jainism, or any other, whether you're a Nyayaka, any of the other schools of Indian soteriology. Okay, well done. Bring the feet down, slow and easy. Catch your breath. My recommendation is rest the hands on the upper chest while you take a few deep breaths. And so to get that comfortable, you might need to adjust your elbows, to adjust your shoulder blades a few times. The neck should be passive. The eyes are soft. When you're ready, roll over. If you're in studio here, roll to face towards me. So I'm going to retract calling it a studio. I don't really like to call it a studio. I'll call it a shala. Shala is a name that's often used for yoga spaces. It just means a home, actually. Bend the leg you're laying on. So you've got 90 degrees and 90 degrees between the calf and thigh and the thigh and tummy. And then we mentioned the psoas earlier. So it inserts in the lesser trochanter of the femur. So the femur is the thigh bone. It has a lesser and greater trochanter, which is just prominences on the general shape of the femur. And so it comes across the lateral pubis. Because the mind and body are one is going to be a lot more effective when you lift up if there's a sort of psychophysical, attitudinal. If we realize that our minds will cause the body to be looser or tighter, then we will inevitably incorporate whatever is the most useful attitudinal stance. Could just be soft, could just be relaxed, could just be happy, content to be at the Buddhist center or to be zooming into the Buddhist center. So you can lift and land the leg multiple times. With the purpose of repeating and refining. So it's as if with each repetition, fibers that are otherwise arrested by other patterns and programs, because everything that happens in the mind goes straight to the body, right? Those patterns, those little fibers, they also are brought on board. Right? Once the foot has landed, you suck the tongue in and you push down, lift and turn. The elbows, forearms and wrists comes to the floor. And the breath is natural and deep and the yoga plays. Jaw soft, thighs soft. So, in terms of musical instruments, there's a lot of musical instruments that have frets, like guitars and mandolins and ukuleles, but you can also get fretless versions. And other instruments like the violin and the cello and the sarod in Indian classical music are also fretless. So when you bring your finger there, you kind of tune in. There's a moment of being not quite attuned and then tuned. It's a lovely way of playing an instrument. So similarly, as you move, there's this freedom to play. You're not sort of boxed in by the frets. So you can slide. You can slide to attunement. You can move. That means to sort of move into it gently. Move into it. Okay, top leg on top of the bottom leg. Come up from the side. Well done. Obviously, we're going to do the second side, especially as now it's really sunning on me. Hooray! Sorry, it's not sunning on you, but you can enjoy mudita. empathic joy for me being in the sun. The leg you're laying on is bent 90 degrees, between the calf and thigh and behind tummy, and then that top of the inner thigh, that lesser trochanter, and you feel into it. Know that feeling into the body is necessarily an attitudinal adjustment. It's necessarily an attitudinal adjustment. And know that attitudes are mirrored in the breath. So, we would expect the breath to get involved, as it were. Eventually the foot lands somewhere a little bit back from the pelvis, but you might lift and land it several times because we can feel this holistic body, brain, breath is holistic. So this is how you use the body to bring the mind and the body and the breath and the universe together. In other words, to cross over into the interdependent field, which is where Tara lives. Tara in the picture behind me. Push down, lift and turn. Elbows, forearms and wrists on the floor. And then play. This is particularly beneficial for the thoracolumbar fascia, an area of fascia that serves in part as muscle attachment for muscles such as the latissimus dorsi. But the thoracolumbar fascia is implicated potentially in back pain that's otherwise undiagnosable by, so not, if you eliminated disc bulge, if you eliminated sacroiliac misalignment, if you've eliminated piriformitis, then this build-up of tissue on the back of the body is potentially guilty. So you melt it through movement. Melt it through movement. Of course, when it gets too thick, it has itself nerve endings in it, which is an interesting thing in itself, that fascia is filled with nerve endings. 20% more nerve endings end in the fascia than they do in the muscles. Okay, top leg on top of the bottom leg. Just curl your way up when you're ready. Good job. And we'll come straight into Adho Mukha Svanasana, downward facing dog. So once you're up, you can check your hands and feet are equidistant from the front and sides of the mat. And then breath is everything. So movement into meditation. Movement into meditation. Meditation isn't some abstracted perfect state like me, but better. Meditation, in a sense, is the negation of me as ascribed to thoughts, feelings, emotions, and the revealing of me as beyond gender, age, job title, emotional state, past conditioning. Beyond that, so when we come into down face dog, we tune out of these sort of polarized experience into this living experience through play. So extend your armpits, inner, outer, under armpit. Inner armpit is the armpit chest. Extending it is only possible by tuning in. That's the leader, which is followed by the outer armpit. And if you pay close attention to that, it will take you a long way in down face dog. Pulling up from just below where the elbow bends, and marrying that, pulling up from where the elbow bends to a stretch through the inner armpit. Well done, gang. Come down, all the way down, actually, all the way down to laying on what I call your tummy, because that's what everyone calls it. It's called the tummy. Lay on your tummy. Good. And you can prop yourself up on your elbows, or as I'm happy to call them, L-bones, inspired by a graduate of the school who genuinely, whose first language isn't English, and just thought, they're called L-bones, like the letter L, because they look like that, and I quite like that, so I've adopted it. So up on your elbows and moving left and moving right and stretching your tummy intuitively. So if you move to the right, you can stretch the left, and vice versa. If you move to the left, you can stretch the right. And then there's moving a bit less to the right and feeling a bit more medial in the left, and so on. Right into smaller movements that allow you to feel into the medial fibers of the more central fibers of the belly. Getting close to the what's called the linea alba. That is like a white line, which is what linea alba means. Running down the middle of the abdominal area. Stretch your legs back one at a time and elongate the muscles there. So remember, a muscle has to be soft to agree to a stretch, and attitude and the condition of the body, everyone knows, correlate completely. Now from here, once you go, you can stretch a bit more if you want. Stretch. The more you stretch, the better you're going to feel in a minute. So backwards with the legs, forwards with the torso. From here, we're going to reach for a leg, right? If you can, you go shin. If you can't, you go ankle. If you can't, you go foot. So shin if you can. It depends on the length of your shin and the length of your arms to some extent. And obviously, if you can, you do one at a time or both together. So both together is fine as well. And just getting hold and adjusting is really useful and enough, actually. So adjusting might mean moving side to side to get a bit more length in the psoas, perhaps by lifting a leg and getting that stretch. Some people feel happy to lift up higher. That's fine too, if you want. To lift the chest and lift the legs. The back of the body moves in towards the front of the body, and the front of the body lifts up. So the back of the body moves into the front of the body, and the front of the body lifts up. We try not to make the knees tight, so visualize them as being a little gentler. We do focus on the pelvic floor. That can be very, very helpful. Okay, come down. Well done, everyone. One hand on top of the other, rest your head on your hands. Makarasana. Makara in Sanskrit means fish. In Japanese, it means pillow. Right? Yes, it does. We had that affirmed. In fact, I know that originally because Yuko told me anyway. So it kind of works for this pose because it's a bit like a pillow that you make with your hands. Sorry, I said makra means fish. That's not right. Matsya means fish. Makra means, well, it's a kind of mythological vehicle that I think it's Varuna, the god Varuna rides on. Anyway, it's a sea creature. Okay, now come up again onto your elbows as soon as you're ready and stretch that tummy again. It's not going to be the same pose, but it requires the same stretch of the psoas. As you stretch your legs back, which stretches the psoas and the rectus femoris and so on, bring your legs closer, right? As you stretch your legs back, bring them closer, right? But the intention is to keep that groin space really open and to stretch the tummy forwards the other way. It's tremendously helpful, the more of those you do. Then you bring your hands by your mid-ribs and take a breath, and that's enough like that. Now your buttocks, right, they will be toned, but they shouldn't be squeezing together, right? They shouldn't be squeezing together. So lightly tone your tummy, push into the floor and lift up. Keep your elbows bent if your shoulders rise up, it's better that way. Suck in your tummy, give it some time. The body will give more, but you've got to just give it some time, right? So sometimes there's a bit of your body that just feels like a great big bit of wood. And if you just stay with the stretch, it will give. It's a slow burn posture. It's called Bhujangasana. The chest goes up to bring the shoulders down. One stays in touch with the pelvic floor. It's one of the best poses for you, but you don't have to like it. Keep that tummy reiterating the pulling up action on the front of the pelvis. Reiterating. Well done. I'm impressed by your longevity. Well done. Rest one hand on the other, back to Makarasana. This mythological sea creature, the Makra. You see, they're very beautiful when you look at them. Sometimes they've got like the tail feathers of a peacock, or sometimes they've got the tail feathers of a whale. But they're always some sort of stylized sea creature. Okay. Roll over. I think you can. Yeah, you can. Come on, you can do it. And then come up from the side. Now, the next pose is a couple of variations. You'll need a block. I'm just going to get myself a block. And then. So, we're going to place the block like this. Now, there are two ways to do it. There's with the block and without the block. I'll show you without the block first, actually. Without the block, I'll go through this quite quickly. Without the block, you fold one leg back, you lift up your bum, you turn the foot so you can sit on it like a ridiculously uncomfortable chair. If that seems like, no thank you, I don't want to do that, it's going to make me feel sad, then instead you sit on the block and the foot you don't sit on the foot, instead it comes underneath and to the side of your block, so it's free like that. Okay? So either you're sitting on the foot or you're sitting on the block and the foot's coming out to the side. I hope that makes sense. Either way, you then bend the other leg. No, I haven't told you which leg to bend, so three of you are going to be turning the wrong way, that's fine. One of you will be turning the right way, that's fine. At home, as long as you like this, I'm happy. Top leg on, lift up and over, like that, and lands with the toes behind the knee. Then you want to make sure your leg is not twisting, so observe the angle of your shin and the angle of your foot, and get them lined up with each other. Turn the shin a little bit more to face the foot. Then you push your leg and bring your arm over. And you turn. This is the other way. Yeah, this. And the other way as well. So you turn towards me. It's because you're doing different legs. Yeah, that's okay. My arm. Take full responsibility. So hopefully you haven't had too much porridge this morning. And you can turn the leg. So lift and turn, lift and turn, lift and turn. You can correlate or even connect together the hand and the shoulder blade, the hand and the top shoulder blade, and moving the hand and feeling that there's a little bit of movement mirrors of the shoulder blade. When the thumb goes forwards of the hand, then you can imagine the medial shoulder blade going forward. So we're entangling the two things because it's easy with one hand, but we need a little help figuring out how to move the shoulder blade. So that's how we do it. We entangle. This is Harinasana. So when the thumb and index finger go forwards, and the deep scapula, the medial scapula goes deeper. Okay, release. What a good pose. What a good pose. Stretch the legs out, well done. Give yourself a bit of energy bar. That could be a problem. Why is this hard? Because the full one is in a lotus position. Yeah. So the irony is that the Ardha one isn't harder, it's easier. Then we're going to fold back the other leg. That's from Jim Tarran's very old book of yoga jokes. Similarly, the foot, you can sit on it or it can come out to the side. Remember, sitting on it could be more than one block, it could be on two blocks. And then you bend the other leg, take a breath or two. You can add more padding, if the mat's not holding enough, you can hold it. Then your leg comes up and over, and again you don't want to twist the knee, so look at the midline of your shin, and look at the direction of your foot. Turn your shin to agree with the foot, right? Don't feel you've got to turn your foot forwards, just keep them so your knee feels peaceful. And then lift, turn, same thing. Right? So you got it. No, you're good. That's it. Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, like that. Sure, yeah, but that works. What you're doing, you can just use your arm. You can even put your in a sort of headlock, like that, like you do to kids. Well, I do to kids anyway. Yeah. Not all kids. So don't just grab kids on the street and do. Just my own, yeah. Or people that I'm close to, their kids too. Breathe into it. Ardha Matsyendra. Matsyendra, or Matsyendranath, as he's known, or Matsyendranath, is one of the founders of Hatha Yoga. He's a Tantrika, actually. Matsyendranatha. So Nata is like, it's a word, it's spelled N-A-T-H-A, which kind of means Lord. So that's the title that many yogins get put on the end of their name. And there's a whole school of Indian practitioners called the Nata Sampradaya, the school of the Natas. I know it sounds like nutters. It's not what's meant. Okay, release. Just center. Well done, everyone. Just stretch out your legs. We're going to sit for a moment in a wide seated Dandasana. So draw the buttock flesh out and back. Sit on a block. If your lower back doesn't go easily in, place your hands with your fingertips or flat down by your hips and sit up light, tall, and meditative. So this is a wide version of Dandasana. And just ranging around. And we really are interested very much in lightness in yoga. Lightness. So that's psychophysical, respiratory. Lightness, like a dandelion seed, is light. And a dandelion seed is light in a sense because it's empty, right? In a metaphorical sense, it has no agenda. It comes without baggage. Deep breaths, honest breaths. Okay, ease out of the pose, and we have to, unfortunately, already come into Shavasana. Unfortunate in some ways, but fortunate in others because it's such a wonderful pose. So we're going to lay on our backs. Using a head support is often useful. It doesn't have to be a full grip. Having your arms away from your body is essential. And scooting the shoulder blades under so your chest is buoyant. If your back is tight, keep your legs bent. Otherwise, extend them. So there's a lot you can't control in life. I don't know if you've noticed that yet. Pretty sure you have. But to be able to respond to the way things are, as they are. You can't control it all, but you can respond appropriately. You have to be empty. Trying to grasp the ungraspable. You exhaust yourself in vain. Release the tight fist of grasping, and boundless infinity is revealed. Let go now. And you are that. You're in Tara's field. The boundless interdependence. Which is a field of compassion. And a field of freedom. As George Harrison once said, life moves on within you and without you, here and now. It's like there's a tingling, living flow of living sensations, of interdependence that we know, not through thinking, but we just know through direct experience, are interdependent. It's like everything is a little node in an infinite spider's web. A movement from anything is a movement of everything. We all move together. So as not to be late, or later, I should say, we'll move the fingers and the toes and a little, it's just feeling into the body. Stretch out in your own intuitive ways, arms and legs. And when you're ready, bend your legs. Place the soles of the feet onto the floor, scoot the buttocks, and then when you're ready, roll onto your side. At home, roll onto your left side. Here in the studio, roll onto your side facing away from where I am. Draw your knees up so your tummy is soft. Roll again when you're ready. Lay as comfortably as you can on the other side. Take your own time to come round. You might rub your eyes or stretch out an arm or a leg. It's natural, it's from the center. We don't have to leave the center. The place of interdependence is the true place of knowledge and power. Power that is over that which you can actually have power over, which is, to dance with the moment. Come up when you're ready from the side. Thank you very much, everyone in real life. Is it well? I know you're in real life at home too, Zoomers and Roomers. May the merit gained in our acting thus go to the alleviation of the suffering of all beings. Oh.